Why your leak appears in different spots each time it rains. If you've had a roof leak that shows up in a different spot every time it rains, you're not crazy. And your roof isn't haunted. But what's actually happening is more complicated than most homeowners realize. And it's why so many repair attempts fail the first time. Here's why this matters. Homeowners waste hundreds or thousands of dollars on failed repairs because they, and sometimes even their contractors, target the visible drip location instead of the actual entry point. You see a stain on your bedroom ceiling during one storm, then a drip in the hallway during the next storm, and it makes you feel like your roof is just falling apart. It's not. You're just seeing the symptoms of something most people don't understand about how water actually moves through your home. I've been installing residential roofing for many years, and one of the most common frustrations I hear is this.
We found a roof leak a couple of weeks ago, and now it's leaking somewhere else.
That's not bad luck. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of how water behaves once it gets past your roofing system. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why roof leaks appear to move from storm to storm, what's really happening inside your roof structure, and why fixing a leak requires detective work, not guesswork. Water rarely drips straight down from the exact point where it enters the roof. Once it gets past the roofing system, past the shingles, past the underlayment, it can move along the roof decking, rafters, trusses, insulation, or drywall until it finds the easiest path downward. Think of it like spilling water on a sloped countertop. The water doesn't just puddle where it lands. It runs along the surface until it finds an edge or a crack to drip through. Your roof structure works the same way. Water enters at one point, then travels along the wood framing or sheathing until gravity finally pulls it through your ceiling. This is why the place you see the leak inside your home is often several feet, sometimes 10 feet or more away from where the water actually entered. If a contractor only looks directly above the stain, they may be in the wrong spot. They'll patch that area, thinking they've solved the problem. The actual entry point is still letting water in. This is also why patching, where it's wet in the attic, rarely works long term. You're treating a symptom, not the source, and until you find the source, you're going to keep seeing leaks. Weather conditions change where water enters. Wind-driven rain can push water through flashing or walls in ways that don't happen during a normal rainfall. A storm with strong winds from one direction may allow water to enter one area of the home, while calm rain might allow it to enter somewhere else, or might not cause a leak at all. Let me give you a real-world example. Let's say you have some compromised window capping around a second-story window on the north side of your home. During calm, straight-down rain, water runs off normally. Everything looks fine. But during a storm with strong northwest winds, rain gets driven horizontally onto the capping and into the roof deck below. That's why you only see the leak during certain storms. Not because the roof randomly decides to fail that day, but because the weather conditions exposed a vulnerability that's been there for a while. And in this scenario, the entry point is not even the roof. If your leak only happens during heavy wind and rain, that's actually a clue. It tells a good roofer to focus on areas where wind-driven rain would normally find vulnerabilities, such as your windows, chimneys, and siding. These are the spots where horizontal rain can bypass your home's normal defenses. This is also why regular roof inspections matter. A small gap in flashing might not cause a problem during normal rain, but it's a ticking time bomb for the next big storm. If you wait until you see a leak to address it, you're already dealing with water damage. If you catch it during an inspection, you can then prevent the problem before it starts. Roof design can create natural weak points where water concentrates. Valleys, chimneys, skylights, roof-to-wall transitions, and plumbing vents are all areas where water flow is concentrated. If flashing or sealants around these areas are compromised, water can enter and travel along structural components before appearing inside. Here's what you need to understand. Any place where two roof planes meet, like a valley, or where something penetrates the roof like a vent pipe or chimney, is a place where water naturally funnels and collects. During a rainstorm, water from a large section of your roof all runs down toward these points. These areas rely on flashing, which is a metal barrier designed to direct water away, and sometimes sealants to keep water out. If those barriers fail, water doesn't just sit there. It finds a way in and starts traveling along the wooden structure underneath. I've traced leaks that started at a chimney flashing failure and dripped through a ceiling 15 feet away in a completely different room. The homeowner had no idea the chimney was even involved because the drip was nowhere near it. But when I went into the attic and followed the moisture trail backward, it led straight to the chimney. The flashing had pulled away from the brick, creating a gap that let water in every time it rained. That water then ran down the chimney structure, traveled along a roof rafter, and finally dripped through the ceiling in what looked like a completely unrelated area. That's the hidden danger of roof penetrations. The failure point and visible symptom can be in totally different areas of your home. This is why roof-to-wall transitions and penetrations should be part of any quality roof inspection. A small separation in chimney flashing today becomes a major interior water damage issue 6 months from now. Now, if you're dealing with a roof leak that keeps moving or coming back after a repair, this is exactly the kind of diagnostic work we do for homeowners in New Jersey. We don't guess. We trace the roof leak path, identify the true source, and fix it right the first time, because we know how frustrating it is to pay for the same repair twice. If you want a roof inspection from someone who actually understands how water moves through your home, check the link in the description or give us a call. We'll come out, do a full assessment, and give you a clear explanation of what's happening and what needs to be done. Your attic space redirects water before you ever see it. Insulation, vapor barriers, and framing can redirect water as it moves through the attic space. Sometimes the water pools on the top of drywall or along framing members before finally dripping through the ceiling. Think of your attic like a maze. Water enters at one point, then has to navigate around insulation bats, along ceiling joists, over vapor barriers, until it finally finds a seam or weak spot in the drywall to drip through. This is why moisture stains in an attic don't always line up with the ceiling stains in the room below. The water entered at the roof level, traveled horizontally along a rafter, pooled against a truss, and then finally dripped through where the drywall was weakest, which might be several feet away from where the water first entered. To find the actual entry point, you have to trace that path backward. You start at the visible drip, go into the attic, and look for the highest point of moisture. That's your starting point for tracking the water back to where it originally came in. If you've ever had a contractor go into your attic, see a wet spot, and say, "Found it," but the leak came back later, that is probably why. They found where the water was pooling, not where it originally entered. And because they didn't trace the full path, they patched the wrong spot. It happens more often than you might think. Diagnosing roof leaks often requires tracing the water path backward from where the stain appears to locate the true entry point. The key takeaway here is this: the location of the interior drip is rarely the actual source of the leak. Water travels through the structure first, which is why the leak can seem to move from storm to storm. Here's how a proper diagnosis works. First, you identify where the water is visible inside your home. Then you go into the attic and look for moisture trails, stains on framing, or wet insulation. From there, you follow the path uphill along the slope of the roof structure until you reach the highest point of moisture, which is usually where the water is entering from outside. Only then do you go onto the roof and inspect the area directly above that entry point for damage such as missing shingles, failed flashing, or compromised sealants. This process takes time and experience. It's not something you can do in 5 minutes by shining a flashlight in the attic, but it's the only way to fix the leak permanently instead of just covering up the symptom. I've had cases where the ceiling stain was in a second-floor bedroom. The attic moisture trail led back toward an exterior wall, and the actual entry point was a roof-to-wall flashing failure near a dormer on the opposite side of the house. If we'd guessed and just patched above the bedroom, the leak would have kept happening. But because we traced it back to the source, we were able to fix the real problem, and the homeowner hasn't had a leak since. This is why roof leaks aren't DIY projects for most homeowners, and why hiring someone who understands building science and water flow is worth the investment. You're not just paying for a patch, you're paying for someone who knows how to solve the actual problem. Because without that knowledge, you're just guessing. And when you're guessing with a roof leak, you're gambling with water damage, mold growth, and structural issues that cost way more to fix than the original leak ever would have. So here's what we've covered. Roof leaks appear in different spots because water travels along structural components before dripping through your ceiling. The visible stain is almost never directly below the entry point. Wind-driven rain changes where water gets in, depending on storm direction, which is why some leaks only happen during certain weather conditions. Roof penetrations and transitions are natural weak points where water concentrates, and if flashing or sealants fail, that's where leaks often start. Your attic structure redirects water as it moves, which is why tracing a leak backward is the only reliable way to find the source. And finally, fixing a roof leak permanently requires understanding the full path of the leak, not just patching where you see some moisture. The big takeaway here is this: if you've been frustrated by a leak that won't go away or keeps moving, you're not dealing with a bad roof. You're dealing with a diagnosis problem. Once you understand that water doesn't drip straight down, that weather conditions actually matter, and that the attic plays a role in where the drip appears, you can have a much smarter conversation with a roofing contractor. You'll know the right questions to ask, and you'll be able to tell the difference between someone who's just guessing and someone who actually knows how to trace a leak properly. If you learned something new today, that's exactly why we make these videos. Most homeowners don't need more patches. They need better information. If you're dealing with a stubborn leak, get it diagnosed properly before you spend money on another temporary repair. If you're in New Jersey, we'd be happy to help. Click the link below to schedule an inspection and take some time to watch my video where I break down the steps you can take to storm-proof your roof. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it.